The gunshot that shattered the morning silence sent Alina Hartwell crashing through the saloon doors, her emerald dress torn at the shoulder and her dark hair escaping its carefully pinned arrangement, as she stumbled into the dusty street of Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory, in the scorching summer of 1882. She had been serving drinks for 3 months at the Lucky Star Saloon, saving every penny to buy passage back east, back to a life that no longer wanted her. The gambler who had grabbed her wrist tonight had been drunk and mean, and when she had pulled away, his gun had gone off wildly. Now she was running, her heart hammering against her ribs as she heard shouting behind her. The street was mostly empty in the pre-dawn darkness, just a few oil lamps flickering in windows where early risers prepared for their day. Alina's worn boots slipped in the dirt as she ran, not knowing where she was going, just knowing she needed to disappear before the gambler's friends came looking. She had seen what happened to saloon girls who caused trouble. She had seen the bruises, the broken bones, the bodies carried out back doors in the middle of the night. A strong hand caught her arm and pulled her sideways into the narrow gap between the general store and the blacksmith shop. Alina opened her mouth to scream, but another hand covered it gently, and a low voice spoke near her ear. "Easy now. I am not going to hurt you." She was pressed against the rough wooden wall, her breath coming in gasps, staring up at the man who had pulled her into the shadows. Even in the dim light, she could make out his features. A strong jaw darkened with several days of stubble, eyes that seemed kind despite the hardness that life on the frontier carved into every man's face, and a black hat pushed back on his head. He wore a dusty brown duster over dark clothes, and a gun belt sat low on his hips. "Those men are looking for you," he said quietly, his hand still over her mouth. "Not if you understand." Alina nodded, her green eyes wide. "I am going to move my hand. Do not scream. I am trying to help." He lowered his hand slowly, watching her face. Alina took a shaky breath, pressing herself against the wall as if she could somehow melt into it and disappear. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help me?" "Because a woman running scared in the middle of the night usually has a good reason," he said simply. He glanced toward the street where voices were getting louder. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I just pulled away from a drunk gambler and his gun went off, but they will blame me anyway." "They always do." The cowboy studied her for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. "My horse is behind the livery stable. Can you ride?" "Yes, but I cannot just leave. Your things are not worth your life," he said flatly. "Those men sound angry, and angry men do not think straight. Come with me now, or take your chances with them. Your choice." Alina had perhaps 3 seconds to decide. She could hear boots hitting the wooden boardwalk, voices calling out crude things about what they would do when they found her. She thought of the small room above the saloon where her few possessions lay. 2 other dresses almost as worn as the one she had on, a daguerreotype of her parents who had died of fever 5 years ago, and a locket that had belonged to her grandmother. None of it was worth dying for. "All right," she breathed. The cowboy took her hand and led her quickly through the gap, moving with the confident silence of someone who knew how to avoid attention. They emerged behind the buildings, where the desert stretched out in the growing dawn light, all sage and sand and distant mountains. The livery stable was a dark shape ahead, and Alina could smell horses and hay as they approached. His horse was a big buckskin gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor. The cowboy pulled the reins free from where he had tied them and swung up into the saddle in one smooth motion, then reached down for Alina. "Give me your hand." She hesitated for just a moment, looking up at this stranger who was offering her escape. She knew nothing about him except that he had kind eyes and had chosen to help her when he could have just as easily walked past. In the Wild West, that was sometimes all you got, split-second decisions based on instinct and hope. Alina placed her hand in his. His grip was strong and sure, and he pulled her up behind him as if she weighed nothing. She had barely gotten settled, her arms wrapping around his waist when he urged the horse forward. They left Redemption Creek at a steady trot, fast enough to put distance between them and trouble but not so fast as to attract attention. Alina clung to the cowboy's back, feeling the solid warmth of him through his duster, smelling dust and leather and something else, something clean like sage after rain. The sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky with streaks of gold and pink when he finally slowed the horse to a walk. They had been riding for over an hour, and Redemption Creek was long out of sight behind them. The desert stretched in all directions, beautiful and harsh in the morning light. "You can relax a bit," the cowboy said over his shoulder. "We are far enough away now." Alina loosened her grip slightly but did not let go. "Where are we going?" "There is a small ranch about 2 hours northwest of here. Belongs to a friend of mine who owes me a favor. You can rest there, get cleaned up, figure out what you want to do next." "I do not have any money to pay you," Alina said quietly. "Or your friend did not ask for money." They rode in silence for a while. Alina watched the landscape change gradually, the flat desert giving way to rolling hills dotted with juniper and pinyon pine. She thought about what she had left behind. 3 months of grueling work for barely enough to eat, men who thought a woman serving drinks was available for anything else they wanted, the constant fear and exhaustion. She had run away from Boston after her parents died, and her uncle had tried to force her into marriage with his business partner, a man 40 years older who already had buried 2 wives. The West had seemed like freedom, but she had learned quickly that freedom had different definitions depending on whether you were a man or a woman. "What is your name?" she asked finally. "James Colton. Most people call me Cole." "Alina Hartwell. I go by Ellie mostly." "Well, Miss Ellie, what were you doing working in a saloon in Redemption Creek? You do not seem like you belong there." Alina almost laughed, but it came out bitter. "Where do I belong then? I came west thinking I could find work as a teacher or maybe a seamstress." Turns out most towns already have teachers, and the seamstresses who are here do not appreciate competition. The saloon was the only place that would hire me. "You are educated?" My father was a professor at Harvard. He made sure I had the same education my brothers would have had if I had brothers. Lot of good it does me out here. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Education is never wasted. Maybe you were just in the wrong town." The sun climbed higher as they rode, and the temperature climbed with it. This was the desert in summer, and by mid-morning it would be brutally hot. Alina was thirsty and tired, her body aching from the rough ride and the tension of the last few hours. Just when she thought she might have to ask Cole to stop, she saw buildings ahead. The ranch was small but well-maintained. A low adobe house with a covered porch, a barn, a corral with several horses, and what looked like a bunkhouse. A man emerged from the barn as they rode up, shading his eyes against the sun. "Cole, that you?" "It is Miguel." The man named Miguel was perhaps 50, weathered and lean, with kind eyes and silver threading through his dark hair. He looked at Alina with concern but no judgment. "We have a situation," Cole said as he dismounted and then helped Alina down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and Cole steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Miss Ellie here needed to leave Redemption Creek quickly. I was hoping you might have space for her to rest and clean up." Miguel nodded immediately. "Of course." "Maria will help you," he said to Alina. "Come, you look ready to collapse." Alina followed Miguel into the house, acutely aware of how she must look, torn dress, tangled hair, dust covering her from head to toe. A woman appeared from the back of the house, plump and motherly with gray-streaked black hair and the same kind eyes as Miguel. "This is my wife, Maria," Miguel said. "Maria, this is Miss Ellie. She needs our help." Maria took one look at Alina and immediately switched into a stream of Spanish, shooing her husband out and taking Alina's arm. "You poor thing. Come, come. You need water, food, a bath, and rest. In that order." Alina felt tears prick her eyes at the simple kindness. She had been surviving on wariness and walls for so long that genuine compassion felt almost painful. "Thank you," she managed. Maria led her through the modest but clean house to a small bedroom. This was our daughter's room before she married and moved to Tucson. You rest here as long as you need. Let me get you some water. She disappeared and returned moments later with a pitcher of water and a cup. Alina drank greedily, not realizing how parched she had been until the cool water hit her throat. Better? Maria asked. Alina nodded. Much better. Thank you. I am sorry to impose like this. I do not want to cause any trouble for you and your husband. Nonsense. Any friend of Cole's is welcome here. That man has helped us more times than I can count. Now let me heat water for a bath. You will feel more human once you are clean. An hour later, Alina was indeed feeling more human. She had bathed, washing away the dust and grime and the smell of the saloon, and Maria had given her one of her daughter's old dresses, a simple blue cotton that was a bit loose but clean and whole. Her hair was still damp, hanging in dark waves down her back, when Maria called her to the kitchen for food. Cole and Miguel were sitting at the table, drinking coffee and talking in low voices. They both stood when Alina entered, and she saw something flicker in Cole's eyes as he looked at her. Without the dirt and desperation, she supposed she looked different. Please sit, Maria said, placing a plate of eggs, beans, and tortillas in front of an empty chair. Eat, you are too thin. Alina sat and ate, trying not to wolf the food down even though she was starving. The men went back to their conversation, and she gathered that Miguel raised horses and Cole sometimes helped him break and train them. They talked about a particularly stubborn mare, about water rights and the drought that had gripped the territory for the past 2 years, about mutual friends and news from various towns. When Alina had finished eating, Maria shooed the men out to work and sat down across from her with fresh coffee. So, Maria said gently, what will you do now? Alina wrapped her hands around the warm cup, staring into the dark liquid as if it might have answers. I do not know. I cannot go back to Redemption Creek. I have nowhere to go, really. No family, no money, no prospects. She looked up at Maria, feeling the weight of her situation pressing down on her. I am afraid I will never be enough, she whispered softly. Never smart enough or strong enough or skilled enough to make it out here. I thought I could, but maybe I was wrong. Maria reached across the table and squeezed Alina's hand. You are stronger than you know, child. You survived losing your parents, you escaped a forced marriage, you traveled across the country alone, and you have been working in one of the hardest jobs a woman can have. That takes strength. Real strength, not the kind men measure in muscles and guns. But what good is strength if it does not get you anywhere? It gets you to tomorrow. And sometimes tomorrow brings opportunities you never imagined today. Maria smiled. I met Miguel when I was running away from my own bad situation. I had no money, no skills, nothing. He took me in, gave me work cooking for his ranch hands, and eventually we fell in love. That was 30 years ago. You never know what life has waiting around the next corner. Alina wanted to believe her, but hope felt like a dangerous thing to hold on to. The door opened and Cole stepped in, hat in hand. Sorry to interrupt. Miguel said I should take Miss Ellie into Socorro tomorrow. It is a bigger town, more opportunities for work. She could stay here tonight and we could leave at first light. Socorro, Alina repeated. It is about a day's ride west of here. Growing town, needs teachers and such. Might be a better fit for you than Redemption Creek ever was. Cole met her eyes. If you are interested, that is. Socorro, a new town, a fresh start. Alina felt something stir in her chest, something that might have been hope after all. Yes, she said. Thank you, I would like that. Cole nodded. Get some rest today, it is a long ride tomorrow. That afternoon, while the men worked with the horses, Maria took Alina out to the garden behind the house. It was a small patch of green in the desert brown, with squash and peppers and tomatoes growing in neat rows, all carefully irrigated with water from the well. I spend an hour every morning and evening watering, Maria said, checking the soil around a tomato plant. It is hard work keeping anything alive out here, but when you get that first ripe tomato warm from the sun, it is worth every minute. Alina helped her weed and water, finding something peaceful in the simple work. The sun was hot but not unbearable yet, and there was something honest about dirt under your fingernails and sweat on your brow earned from productive labor. Cole is a good man, Maria said after a while, not looking at Alina. He does not talk about his past much, but I know he lost his family young. His parents were killed by raiders when he was 16. He had a younger sister who died of pneumonia the next winter. He has been drifting ever since, working ranches, doing odd jobs, helping people when he can. I think he helps because he could not help the people he loved. Alina thought about the man who had pulled her into the shadows, who had offered her escape when he could have just walked by. Why are you telling me this? Because I see the way he looks at you, and I see the way you look at him when you think no one is watching. Maria smiled. I may be old, but I remember what it is like when your heart starts waking up to someone new. I just met him this morning, Alina protested, feeling her cheeks heat. Sometimes that is all it takes. A moment, a choice, a kindness offered and accepted. The rest is just time. That evening, they all ate dinner together on the porch as the sun set in spectacular shades of orange and red. Cole had cleaned up, and without his hat and duster, Alina could see him more clearly. He was probably in his late 20s, lean and strong in the way of men who worked with their hands, with sandy brown hair that was a bit too long and eyes that were a startling blue when the light hit them right. He had a scar along his jaw that she wondered about but did not ask. After dinner, Miguel brought out a guitar and played while Maria sang in Spanish. The songs were beautiful and sad, full of longing and loss and the kind of deep emotion that transcended language. Alina sat in a rocking chair, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky, feeling more at peace than she had in months. Cole sat on the porch railing, listening to the music, his face thoughtful. When Miguel and Maria finally went inside, leaving them alone with the night sounds of the desert, he spoke quietly. You should know that Socorro is not paradise. It has its own problems, its own dangers. But it is bigger than Redemption Creek and it has more opportunities. I know the owner of the hotel there. She is a tough woman who might be willing to give you a job, something better than saloon work. Why are you doing this? Alina asked. Helping me, I mean, you do not know me. Cole was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the distant mountains that were just dark shapes against the star-filled sky. I told you my parents were killed when I was young. What I did not tell you is that my mother was running away from my father that day. He was a hard man, mean when he drank. She was taking me and my sister to her family in California, but my father came after us, and there was a fight, and some men he had hired as trackers decided they would rather rob us than help him. My parents both died in the crossfire. I was old enough to protect myself, but my sister was only 8. We survived, but barely. After she died, I swore that if I ever saw someone who needed help, I would not look away. I would not be like those men who chose money over mercy. Alina felt her throat tighten. I am sorry. For your loss. It was a long time ago. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt something shift between them, some invisible line crossed. But when I saw you running this morning, scared and alone, I saw my mother. I saw my sister. I saw every woman who ever needed help and did not get it, so I did what I wish someone had done for them. You are a good man, James Colton, Alina said softly. He shook his head. I am just a man trying to live with ghosts, but thank you. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while longer, until Alina's exhaustion caught up with her, and she excused herself to bed. She fell asleep quickly, the day's events catching up with her all at once, and she slept deeply and dreamlessly in the narrow bed that had once belonged to a rancher's daughter. She woke before dawn to the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee. Maria was already in the kitchen, packing food for their journey, and Cole was outside saddling his horse. Alina dressed quickly in the borrowed blue dress and joined Maria. Here, Maria said, handing her a bundle. Food for the road and an extra dress that belonged to my daughter. You will need it. I cannot repay you, Alina said, feeling that helpless gratitude again. Then repay me by living a good life. That is payment enough. Maria hugged her tightly. Be safe, child, and do not be afraid to let someone care for you. You deserve kindness." Miguel was saying something similar to Cole, who was nodding and checking the saddle's straps. When Alina approached, Cole helped her up onto the horse and then swung up behind her this time. "More comfortable for a long ride," he explained. "You can lean back against me if you get tired." They left as the sun was painting the eastern sky with pastels, and Alina watched the ranch disappear behind them, feeling grateful and sad and nervous all at once. This time, as they rode, they talked. Cole asked about her life back east, and Alina found herself telling him things she had not talked about in years. Her father's book-lined study where she had spent hours reading, her mother's garden, the way Boston smelled in the spring when everything was blooming. She talked about the grief of losing them both within weeks of each other, the fever that had swept through their neighborhood and taken so many. She talked about her uncle's betrayal, the way he had looked at her as property to be traded, not a person with her own dreams and desires. "What were your dreams?" Cole asked. Alina thought about it. "I wanted to teach. I wanted to help children learn to love books the way my father taught me. I wanted to make a difference, even a small one. And I wanted to fall in love someday with someone who saw me as an equal, not a decoration or a servant. Is that foolish? No, that is not foolish at all. What about you? What do you want?" Cole was quiet for so long that Alina thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "I want to stop running. I have been drifting for more than 10 years, never staying anywhere long, never putting down roots. Part of it is that I am afraid if I stop, the ghosts will catch up with me, but part of it is that I have not found a reason to stay anywhere." "Does that make sense?" "Yes," Alina said. "I think I understand that feeling, like you are waiting for something but you do not know what it is." Exactly that. They stopped around mid-morning to rest the horse and eat some of the food Maria had packed. They found a spot of shade under a cottonwood tree near a mostly dry creek bed, and Cole helped Alina down. "We are making good time," he said, offering her a canteen of water. "Should reach Socorro by late afternoon if we keep this pace." Alina drank and then sat on a flat rock, looking around at the landscape. It was harsh and beautiful, all muted colors and stark lines. "It is so different from Boston," she said. "Everything there was green and crowded. Here it feels like you can see forever." "Does that bother you?" "No." "I thought it would, but it does not. There is something honest about it, nothing hidden, nothing pretending to be more than it is." Cole sat near her, taking off his hat and running a hand through his hair. "The desert does not lie. It is brutal and it will kill you if you are not careful, but it does not pretend to be something it is not. I appreciate that." They ate in companionable silence. Tortillas wrapped around beans and cheese, apples that were starting to soften in the heat. Alina found herself watching Cole from the corner of her eye, noticing small things. The way his hands were scarred and calloused from hard work. The way he was always aware of his surroundings, his eyes constantly scanning even when he seemed relaxed. The way he had a small smile when he caught her looking at him. "What?" she asked, feeling her cheeks warm. "Nothing. Just thinking that Maria's daughter's dress looks better on you than it probably ever did on her." Alina did not know what to say to that, so she focused on her food, her heart doing strange things in her chest. When they set out again, Alina was more aware of Cole's presence than she had been before. More aware of his arm brushing against hers as they rode, of the solid warmth of him, of the way he adjusted his position so she could be more comfortable. She wondered what it meant that this stranger felt safer than anyone she had known in years. Socorro appeared in the distance as the sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon. It was indeed larger than Redemption Creek, with more buildings and more people visible even from a distance. Alina felt nervousness flutter in her stomach. "What if there is no work for me here either? Then we will figure something else out," Cole said simply, "but let us not borrow trouble before we have to." He rode straight to a sturdy 2-story building with a sign that read Socorro Hotel in bold letters. A woman was sweeping the front steps, and she looked up as they approached. She was in her 50s, tall and broad-shouldered with iron-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. "James Colton," she said, her voice like gravel. "What trouble are you bringing to my doorstep now? Hello, Ruth. It is good to see you too." Cole dismounted and helped Alina down. "This is Miss Alina Hartwell. She is looking for honest work. I thought you might be able to help." Ruth looked Alina up and down, her expression giving nothing away. "Can you read and write?" "Yes, ma'am. I was educated in Boston." "Can you keep books, manage accounts?" "Yes, ma'am." "Can you handle difficult guests without losing your temper or your dignity?" Alina thought of the drunks and gamblers she had dealt with at the Lucky Star. "I can." Ruth nodded slowly. "My assistant quit last week to get married. I need someone who can help manage the hotel, keep the books, handle correspondence. Room and board plus $15 a month. If you steal from me or lie to me, you will regret it. If you work hard and prove yourself trustworthy, I will treat you fairly. What do you say?" Alina felt hope bloom in her chest like one of Maria's desert flowers. "I say yes, ma'am, thank you. Do not thank me yet." "You have not seen the work involved." But Ruth's stern face softened just slightly. "Come on, I will show you your room and explain what I expect." Alina turned to Cole, suddenly not wanting to say goodbye to the man who had rescued her, who had ridden with her for 2 days, who had given her this chance. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything. You are welcome, Miss Ellie." He smiled at her and it transformed his face, made him look younger and less haunted. "I will be in Socorro for a few days, working for a rancher north of town. If you need anything, Ruth knows how to find me." Then he tipped his hat, mounted his horse, and rode away. Alina watched him go, feeling an ache in her chest that surprised her with its intensity. She had known him for less than 2 days, but somehow the thought of not seeing him again felt wrong. "Come on, girl," Ruth said, not unkindly. "Daylight is burning and I need to show you everything before dark." The room Alina was given was small but clean, with a real bed, a washstand, a wardrobe, and a window that overlooked the main street. It was more than she had dared hope for. Ruth showed her the hotel's operation. 20 rooms, usually half full, with a dining room that served breakfast and dinner to guests and locals. There were account books to keep, correspondence with suppliers, schedules for the cleaning girls, 1,000 small details that kept the place running. "It is a lot to learn," Ruth said bluntly, "but you seem smart enough to handle it. We will start tomorrow morning at 6. For tonight, get settled, have some dinner, rest. You look like you have been through something." That was an understatement, but Alina just nodded. "Thank you for this chance, Miss Ruth." "It is Mrs. Ruth, actually, though my husband passed 15 years ago, and I am not doing you a favor, girl. I need help and you need work. As long as we both hold up our end, we will get along fine." Alina ate dinner in the hotel dining room, a surprisingly good beef stew with fresh bread, and then retreated to her room. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind full of everything that had happened. 3 days ago, she had been serving drinks in Redemption Creek, hopeless and scared. Now she was in a new town, with honest work and a clean room and the possibility of a real future. And she was thinking about a cowboy with kind eyes and ghosts he could not shake. She worked hard over the next week, learning the rhythms of the hotel, the personalities of the regular guests, the way Ruth liked things done. She discovered she was good at the work, that her education and her natural organizational skills made her valuable. Ruth was demanding but fair, and Alina found herself actually enjoying the challenges. She did not see Cole during that first week, though she looked for him every time she went outside. She told herself it was silly to watch for someone she barely knew, but her heart did not listen to logic. On the 8th day, she was in the hotel office working on the account books when Ruth appeared in the doorway. "There is someone here to see you." Alina looked up, her heart jumping. "Who? Go see for yourself." She walked out to the front desk, and there he was, Cole, his hat in his hands and dust on his clothes like he had just ridden in. His face lit up when he saw her. "Miss Ellie, you look well." "I am well. The work here is good." She wanted to say more, wanted to tell him that she had thought about him every day, but the words stuck in her throat. I am glad. I was hoping I might take you to dinner tonight if you are free. There is a cafe down the street that serves decent food, and I owe you a proper meal that was not eaten on the trail. She is free, Ruth called from somewhere behind them. She has been working hard all week. She deserves an evening off. Alina felt her cheeks warm but nodded. I would like that. I will come by at 7 if that suits you. That suits me fine. The afternoon dragged interminably. Alina finished her work, went to her room and changed into the nicer of the 2 dresses she now owned, tried to do something with her hair beyond just pinning it back. She felt nervous and excited and foolish all at once. Ruth found her fidgeting in front of the mirror. You look lovely, stop fussing. I do not know why I am so nervous, it is just dinner. It is never just dinner, Ruth said knowingly. That man rode back into town specifically to see you. That means something. Cole arrived exactly at 7, wearing clean clothes and looking like he had made his own effort to tidy up. He offered Alina his arm and they walked down the street to the cafe, a small place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of home cooking. They talked easily over dinner, falling back into the comfortable conversation they had discovered on the trail. Cole told her about the ranch where he had been working, breaking horses for a wealthy owner who was expanding his operation. Alina told him about the hotel, about Ruth's gruff kindness, about a guest who had insisted there were ghosts in his room when it was just the wind rattling the shutters. Do you like Sakura? Cole asked. I do. It feels like a place where I could actually build a life, not just survive day to day. Ruth says if I keep working hard, she might make me a partner in the hotel eventually. She has no children to leave it to, and she likes the idea of it going to someone who will care for it the way she does. That is wonderful, Ellie. You deserve that kind of future. Alina set down her fork, suddenly needing to say something that had been building in her all week. Cole, why did you come back? You could have just left after bringing me here. You owed me nothing. He looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes serious. I came back because I could not stop thinking about you. All week, I kept finding excuses to ride back into town. I told myself I just wanted to make sure you were all right, that you had found work and were safe. But the truth is I wanted to see you again because you make me feel something I have not felt in a long time. What is that? Like maybe I found a reason to stop running. Alina's breath caught. Cole, I know we just met. I know it is fast and probably foolish. But I feel like I have been waiting for you without knowing I was waiting. Does that sound crazy? No, Alina whispered. It does not sound crazy at all. He reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm around hers. I do not have much to offer. I am just a drifter with a horse and a gun and more ghosts than a man should carry. But I am honest and I work hard and I would never hurt you, and I would like to keep seeing you if you will have me. Alina looked at this man who had saved her, who had shown her kindness when he did not have to, who was offering her something precious and fragile and real. She thought about her whispered confession to Maria about never being enough. But when Cole looked at her like this, she felt like maybe she was more than enough. Maybe she was exactly what he needed, and he was exactly what she needed. I would like that too, she said. His smile was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. They courted properly over the next 3 months, Cole taking whatever work he could find in the area so he could stay near Sakura. He would take Alina to dinner when she had evenings off, or they would walk together through the town in the cool of the evening, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood before the tragedy, about his father's small ranch, about his sister's laugh. She told him about Boston, about the life she had left behind, about the books she loved and the dreams she still held. They went on a picnic one Sunday, riding out to a spot Cole knew where a spring created a small oasis in the desert. They sat in the shade of cottonwood trees, eating the food they had packed and talking lazily. At some point, Cole reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Alina's ear, and the simple gesture felt more intimate than anything she had experienced. You are so beautiful, he said quietly. Alina shook her head. I am not. I am too thin and my hands are rough from work and my hair never behaves properly. You are beautiful to me. She looked down at her hands, feeling emotion rise in her throat. I am afraid, she whispered softly. I am afraid I will never be enough. Not pretty enough or graceful enough or whatever it is men want. My uncle said I was too plain and too smart for my own good, that I should be grateful anyone wanted me at all. What if he was right? Cole took both her hands in his, making her look at him. His eyes were fierce. Your uncle was a fool and a bully. You are more than I deserve, Ellie. You are smart and strong and brave. You crossed a continent alone, you survived things that would have broken other people, and you did it with grace and dignity. You are everything. You cannot mean that. I have never meant anything more in my life. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, his lips warm against hers. Alina felt something break open in her chest, some wall she had built to protect herself crumbling into dust. When they pulled apart, she was crying, and Cole wiped her tears away with his thumbs. I think I am falling in love with you, she said, her voice shaking. Good, Cole said, smiling. Because I fell in love with you the moment I pulled you into that alley, and you looked at me like I was either your salvation or your doom. They spent the rest of the afternoon by the spring, talking and kissing and making promises in the quiet way of people who have found something unexpected and precious. That evening, Cole walked Alina back to the hotel, their fingers intertwined. Ruth took one look at them and smiled knowingly. About time you two figured it out, she said. Over the next few months, their relationship deepened. Cole took a job at a ranch just outside town, working with their horses, and he became a regular fixture in Sakaro. People got used to seeing him and Alina together, and the gossips had a field day speculating about when he would propose. Alina bloomed under the attention and care. She gained weight, her face filling out and color returning to her cheeks. She threw herself into her work at the hotel, proving herself indispensable to Ruth. She made friends in town. The schoolteacher, Mrs. Henderson, who loved books as much as Alina did, the minister's wife, who organized charity work, the women who met weekly to quilt and share news. She felt like she had finally found a place where she belonged, a life that was truly hers. Cole came by the hotel one evening in early December, as the desert winter was settling in with cold nights and crisp days. He found Alina in the office, working on correspondence by lamplight. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. Alina put on her coat and followed him outside. He had his horse waiting and he helped her up and then mounted behind her, just like that first morning when he had pulled her from danger. But this time, there was no fear, just anticipation. He rode out of town to a small rise that overlooked Sakaro. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold, and the first stars were appearing in the darkening east. I bought some land, Cole said, his arms around Alina as they sat on the horse looking at the view. Just a few acres, but it has good water and good grass. I am going to build a house, nothing fancy but solid and warm and ours. Alina turned in the saddle to look at him. Ours. Cole dismounted and helped her down, then pulled a small box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a simple gold ring with a small sapphire. Ellie, I know I am not much of a prize. I do not have family or fortune or any of the things a woman should want in a husband. But I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. You made me want to stop running, want to build something permanent and real. Will you marry me? Alina looked at this man who had appeared in her darkest moment like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray. She thought about all the times over the past months when he had shown her through actions, not just words, that he valued her. The way he listened when she talked about her work, the way he respected her intelligence and her independence, the way he made her feel safe and cherished and seen. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply, and Alina felt complete in a way she had never felt before. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not just love, but partnership, not just safety, but belonging. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Socorro with Ruth and Miguel and Maria and half the town in attendance. Alina wore a dress that Mrs. Henderson and the quilting ladies had made for her, cream-colored silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. Cole wore a new suit that still looked uncomfortable on him, but his eyes when he saw Alina walk down the aisle made every woman in the church sigh. The minister spoke about love and commitment and the bonds of marriage, but Alina barely heard him. She was too busy looking at Cole, at the man who had changed her life by simply choosing to help when he did not have to. When the minister said Cole could kiss his bride, he did so thoroughly, to the applause and laughter of everyone present. They spent their wedding night at the hotel in the nicest room, which Ruth had decorated with wildflowers and candles. Cole was gentle and patient, and Alina felt loved in every touch, every whispered word. She had been afraid of this, of the vulnerability and intimacy, but with Cole it felt right. It felt like coming home. In the morning they rode out to Cole's land to see the house that was being built. It was just a frame so far, but Alina could see what it would become. A simple ranch house with a bedroom and a kitchen and a living room with a porch where they could sit in the evenings. There would be a barn for horses and a chicken coop and eventually a garden like Maria's. "What do you think?" Cole asked, his arm around her waist as they stood looking at their future. "I think it is perfect," Alina said. "I think we can build a real life here. We can build anything as long as we do it together." Alina continued working at the hotel while the house was being built. Ruth had officially made her a partner, signing over half the business to her with the understanding that Alina would take over completely when Ruth was ready to retire. It was more than Alina had ever dreamed of having. Cole worked the ranch job and spent his free time working on their house. Miguel came to help, and some of the other men from town who owed Cole favors or just liked him. By spring, the house was finished, solid and simple and theirs. They moved in on a warm April day, with Maria bringing them bread and salt for luck, and Ruth giving them a set of fine china that had belonged to her mother. Alina stood in the kitchen of her own home, looking around at the simple furnishings they had bought and built, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That night they lay in their bed, the window open to let in the cool night air and the sound of coyotes singing in the distance. "Are you happy?" Cole asked, his fingers tracing patterns on Alina's arm. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," she said honestly. "Sometimes I think about that morning in Redemption Creek, how scared I was, how hopeless everything felt, and then I think about how one moment, one choice changed everything." "You changed everything," Cole said. "I was just drifting, waiting to die or for something to give me a reason to live, and then I saw you and I knew. I knew you were the reason I had been waiting for." Alina turned to face him, her hand on his cheek. "I love you, James Colton." "I love you, Alina Colton." They made love slowly, taking their time, learning each other in the way of couples who know they have a lifetime ahead of them. And afterward, Alina lay with her head on Cole's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and thought about how the universe sometimes gives you exactly what you need exactly when you need it. A year after they married, Alina gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas after Cole's father. The birth was hard, attended by a midwife and Maria, with Cole pacing outside like a caged animal until Maria finally let him in to meet his son. Cole held the tiny baby with such wonder and fear on his face that Alina felt tears slide down her cheeks. "He is perfect," Cole whispered. "He is so small. What if I do something wrong? You will do everything right," Alina said confidently. "You will love him and protect him and teach him to be a good man like his father." They settled into the rhythms of parenthood, exhausted and overwhelmed and completely in love with this small person they had created. Cole was a patient, devoted father, getting up with Thomas in the night, changing diapers without complaint, singing old songs his mother had sung to him. Alina went back to work at the hotel part-time when Thomas was 3 months old, bringing him with her and keeping him in a basket behind the desk. Ruth became an honorary grandmother, delighting in spoiling the baby whenever Aliner's back was turned. Life was full and busy and good. 2 years later, Aliner gave birth to twin daughters, Rose and Lily, and their small house suddenly felt very crowded. Cole immediately began planning an addition, and by the time the girls were walking, they had added 2 more bedrooms and expanded the kitchen. The ranch grew too. Cole bought more land, more horses, and eventually hired help. He had a reputation for gentling difficult horses, for taking the ones no one else could handle and turning them into reliable mounts. People came from all over the territory to buy Cole Colton's horses. Aliner managed the business side of both the ranch and her partnership in the hotel. She kept meticulous books, handled correspondence, negotiated prices with buyers. She discovered she had a head for business, that the education her father had given her was valuable in ways she had never imagined. The years passed in the way years do, sometimes slowly and sometimes too fast. Thomas grew into a serious boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's love of books. Rose and Lily were opposite in temperament, Rose bold and adventurous, Lily quiet and thoughtful but devoted to each other in the way of twins. When Thomas was 8, Aliner gave birth to another son, Samuel, and their family felt complete. They had struggles, of course. A drought one year that killed half their herd. A bad fall that left Cole with a broken leg that healed crooked, leaving him with a slight limp. The time Thomas got lost in the desert, and they spent a terrifying night searching before finding him asleep under a mesquite tree, scared but unharmed. But they had joys too. The first time Thomas read a whole book by himself and the pride on his face. Rose winning a horse race against boys twice her age. Lily's beautiful drawings that covered the walls of the house. Samuel's infectious laugh that could make anyone smile. Ruth passed away when Thomas was 12, leaving her half of the hotel to Aliner outright. Aliner hired a manager to run the daily operations while she focused on the ranch and her growing children, but she still kept the books and made the major decisions. The hotel prospered under her ownership, and she was proud of what she had helped build. Miguel and Maria remained close friends, their ranch prospering as well. They had become honorary grandparents to Aliner and Cole's children, always welcome at the Colton house, always ready with advice or help or just a listening ear. One evening, when Aliner was 42 and Cole was 45, they sat on their porch watching the sunset, something they had done thousands of times over the years. The children were all inside, arguing over a game, their voices drifting out through the open windows. "Do you remember that morning in Redemption Creek?" Aliner asked, her hand in Cole's. "Every detail," Cole said. "You came crashing through those saloon doors like you were on fire, and I just knew I had to help you. I thought I was going to die that day, I really did. I had given up on everything. I am glad you did not give up. I am glad you let me help you." Aliner looked at their joined hands, at the matching silver in their hair, at the life they had built together. "Do you remember what I said to you once, about being afraid I would never be enough?" "I remember, and I remember what I told you." "You were right," Aliner said softly. "I was enough, I am enough. Not because I am perfect or because I never struggle, but because I am enough for you and you are enough for me, and together we are more than either of us could have been alone." Cole raised her hand to his lips and kissed it. "You are more than I deserve, Ellie, you always have been." "No," she said, smiling. "We deserve each other, we fought for this, both of us. We chose each other every day for 20 years, that is worth more than deserving, that is love." They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the stars came out one by one until the sky was full of light. Thomas grew up to become a lawyer, studying in Denver and then returning to Socorro to open a practice. He married a schoolteacher named Anne, and they gave Aliner and Cole 3 grandchildren. Thomas was fair and honest in his work, known for taking cases for people who could not afford fancy legal representation, and both Aliner and Cole were proud of the man he had become. Rose, true to her nature, refused to settle down young. She worked on the ranch as good with horses as her father and eventually opened her own small horse-breeding operation. She married at 30 to a former cavalry officer named Jack, and they had 2 children, both girls as fearless as their mother. Lily became an artist, her drawings evolving into beautiful paintings that she sold in galleries as far away as San Francisco. She married a fellow artist, a gentle man named Peter, and they split their time between Socorro and Santa Fe, where the art community was thriving. They had one son who inherited his mother's quiet nature and his father's artistic talent. Samuel followed in his father's footsteps, working the ranch and expanding it further. He married his childhood sweetheart, the daughter of Miguel and Maria's youngest son, and they had 4 children who filled the old house with noise and laughter. Cole and Alina grew old together, their love deepening with time rather than fading. They became the foundation of a large, sprawling family, their children and grandchildren all knowing the story of how they met, how one moment of kindness had changed everything. When Alina was 65, she fell ill with pneumonia. It was a bad winter, cold and wet, and the illness settled deep in her lungs. Cole sat by her bedside day and night, holding her hand, talking to her, refusing to let her slip away. "You cannot leave me," he said, his voice rough with fear and exhaustion. "I do not know how to be in this world without you." Alina, weak and feverish, squeezed his hand. "I am not going anywhere yet, we have more sunsets to watch together." She recovered slowly, spring bringing warmth and healing. But the illness had aged her, leaving her frailer than before. Cole aged too, his limp more pronounced, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still the same blue that Alina had fallen in love with. They celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with their entire family gathered at the ranch. There were more than 40 people there, counting all the children and grandchildren, and the house that had once seemed so spacious was bursting at the seams. Thomas gave a toast, raising his glass. "To my parents, who taught me what real love looks like, who showed me that kindness matters, that integrity matters, that choosing each other every day matters. May we all be lucky enough to find what you have." Everyone drank and cheered, and Alina looked around at all these people who existed because she had run scared through a dusty street 30 years ago and a cowboy had chosen to help her. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his arm around her. "I am thinking about how one moment can change everything. How if you had ridden past that morning I would not be here, none of this would exist. But I did not ride past, and we are here, and this is real. I love you, James Colton. I have loved you for 30 years, and I will love you until the day I die and probably beyond that too. I love you, Alina Colton. You are my salvation, my partner, my best friend, my home. You are everything." They lived another 15 years, watching their grandchildren grow and welcoming great-grandchildren into the world. They slowed down, as people do, spending more time on the porch and less time working, content to let the younger generation take over the ranch and the hotel. Cole's ghosts finally seemed to rest. He still thought of his parents and his sister, but the memories no longer haunted him. He had built a new family, a new life, and he had found peace. Alina never regretted leaving Boston, never wished she had made different choices. Every hardship, every fear, every moment of doubt had led her to this life, and she would not trade it for anything. They died within months of each other. Cole first and then Alina, as if she had just been waiting to make sure he was settled before following. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch with a simple stone that read, "James and Alina Colton, partners in life united in death, they chose love." Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered for the funerals, sharing stories about the couple who had built something lasting from one moment of kindness. About how Cole had saved Alina and Alina had saved Cole, and how they had spent their lives proving that love was a choice you made every day. Thomas, now an old man himself, stood at his mother's grave and thought about the story he had heard countless times growing up. about the saloon in Redemption Creek, about the cowboy who had pulled a scared woman into an alley and offered her escape. "I am afraid I will never be enough," his mother had whispered once, in a moment of fear and doubt. "You are more than I deserve," his father had said, and he had meant it. And together, they had built a life that was more than either of them could have imagined. They had chosen each other, chosen love, chosen to believe that one moment of kindness could change everything, and it had. The Colton Ranch continued for generations, passed down through Samuel's line, a testament to what Cole and Alina had built. The hotel in Socorro remained in the family too, managed by Lily's descendants, still serving travelers and locals alike. And in Socorro, when people told stories about the old days, about the people who had shaped the town, they always mentioned James and Alina Colton. The cowboy and the saloon girl who had found each other in the hardest of circumstances and had built something beautiful. They became legend in their own way. A love story set against the harsh beauty of the Arizona desert, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone help you, and the most powerful thing you can do is offer help when you do not have to. Samuel kept his father's old duster, the one he had been wearing that morning in Redemption Creek, carefully preserved. And he kept his mother's first dress, the borrowed blue cotton from Maria's daughter. They were family treasures, tangible reminders of where it all began. The sapphire ring that Cole had given Alina was passed down through the daughters of the family, each generation telling the story of how their ancestor had found love when she least expected it. How she had learned that she was always enough, that she was more than enough, that she was everything. And on summer evenings, when the desert cooled and the stars came out, you could almost imagine two figures sitting on the porch of the old ranch house, holding hands and watching the sunset, their love still echoing through the generations they had created, a testament to the power of one moment, one choice, one act of kindness that changed everything. The Wild West was a hard place, unforgiving and brutal, where survival was never guaranteed and comfort was rare. But it was also a place where people could reinvent themselves, where a woman running scared could become a successful businesswoman and mother, where a drifting cowboy could find purpose and peace, where two broken people could come together and make something whole. That was the real legacy of James and Alina Colton, not just the ranch or the hotel or the family they had built, but the proof that love was possible even in the hardest of circumstances, that kindness mattered even when it cost you something, that choosing each other every day was the most important choice anyone could make. Their great-great-grandchildren would sit around fires in the cold winters and hot summers, listening to the story of how it all began, and they would learn that family was not just about blood, but about the choices people made, about the moments when someone decided to help instead of hurt, to love instead of fear, to believe instead of doubt. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, James and Alina Colton were together, still choosing each other, still proving that love was the only thing that truly lasted, the only thing that mattered when everything else faded away. They had found each other in a dusty Arizona street in 1882, and they had built a life that echoed through time, a love story that reminded everyone who heard it that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe you are enough, and the most powerful thing you can do is tell someone else that they are more than you deserve, and mean it with every fiber of your being. The desert kept their secrets, held their memories, and stood as witness to what they had accomplished. And in Socorro, in the hotel that still bore their name and on the ranch that still raised horses the way Cole had taught his children and grandchildren, their presence lingered like a blessing, a reminder that love was always worth fighting for, always worth choosing, always worth believing in, no matter how impossible it seemed at the start. That was the true end of their story, but also the beginning of countless others, because the love they had shared did not die with them. It lived on in every choice their descendants made to choose kindness over cruelty, love over fear, hope over despair. It lived on in the knowledge that one person reaching out to another could change the course of history, could create ripples that spread out through time, touching lives that would never even know the names of the two people who had started it all. And that was how their story ended. Not with a bang or a whimper, but with the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, a love well chosen, a legacy that would outlast stone and steel and story, living on in the hearts and actions of everyone who came after, everyone who heard the tale and thought, maybe, just maybe, I could be that brave too. I could choose love too. I could believe I am enough too. And in that belief, in that choice, James and Alina Colton would live forever.